Hello guys and welcome back. Today I'm going over all the Borderlands 2 / pre-sequel new DLC rumors condensed into one video. Obviously, huge shout out to Supmato, That Johns, Alex, Go to the Darkness, Mental Mars, and everyone else that helped bring these details to the community. There's no thumbnail artist for today's video, so be sure to follow me on Twitter at HayderHype. Everything we mention in this video is a rumor but has been backed up with good information. I'll link all the sources down below. Timestamps will be down below as well if you guys just want to jump ahead to a certain section. So with that, let's get right into it. Okay, so first, there are some background details that you will need to know about how Gearbox makes their projects at their studio to understand the DLC rumors. For their project types, Gearbox has three main names that they used. First are trees, which are larger projects. An example is Borderlands having the name Willow. Bushes are smaller projects, and flowers are DLC. Second is that if this DLC rumor does end up being true and being released either for Borderlands 2 or Borderlands the pre-sequel, this will most likely not be available on last-gen consoles. So just to reiterate, this new content will most likely not come to PS3 or the Xbox 360. Gearbox has already pumped out as much content as they could for last-gen consoles. The consoles themselves just have limited memory, which is why Gearbox even transitioned into making the Headhunter packs instead of full-fledged DLC towards the end of the game's life cycle, just to maximize how much content they could give us while still being within the memory constraints of the old consoles. But obviously this does give Gearbox new room to move around with newer gen consoles. Something else that has come up with this discussion is that the Handsome Collection bundle was added to Steam, which some have seen as Gearbox making early marketing moves for this DLC, because once they are ready to release this DLC, they can say only available for the Handsome Collection, which could get people to buy the Handsome Collection on Steam instead of just Borderlands 2 or the pre-sequel separately, which is just speculation, but it makes sense to me, at least from a marketing perspective, instead of having to say, oh, it's available for Borderlands 2 on PC, but only the Handsome Collection on the Xbox One and PS4, if that makes sense to you guys. And finally, you will need to know some Steam DB terminology to understand what is happening behind the scenes with these two games. So I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible, hopefully to keep confusion to a minimum. There is an awesome Reddit post by the user RevLayley, which is very helpful to make sense of a lot of this information, so I'll link that down below, and I took a lot of it for inspiration in this video. So first, you need to know what a depot is. It's a collection of contents. This can be game data, binaries, executables, which isn't too important to know, but just knowing that it's a package of files and data is good enough. Next is a branch. So a game or application on Steam can be in one or more branches. Public branches are accessible by everyone. The current public named branch is usually the latest version of the game that can be installed via Steam. Other differently named public branches may exist to store older versions of the game for people to downgrade to for whatever reason. There can be public beta branches for open betas. Branches can also be private though, and they can only be accessed via a password to see its contents. Closed betas or company internal testing will use these private branches, and that's what we are going to see with all the branches we talk about today. There's a change number, so any change to a Steam game, public or private, gets a bump in its change number. It's a global system and system-wide ID that always increments. When the change number for a Steam game updates, it's just not the next one for that game, it's the next one for everything on Steam, so these numbers are very large. Then there's a build ID, which is a change to the content of the game, which gets it a new build ID. Again, a globally incrementing system. If you see one or more branches with the same build ID, it means they copied or merged changes from one branch to another, generally temporarily, and they will have the same build ID. And then there's also the app ID, which isn't too important for this. So that is all the background information. I know it's a lot, but it's out of the way. So now let's get into the first mention of these rumors and where they came from originally. So the first mention of these new DLC rumors came from the YouTube channel Triple S League. If you've been around this channel for a while, you might also remember they were the ones who brought to light the Borderlands 3 localization rumors as well, which I already have a video covering. but the DLC news came from their podcast number 68 around the 3-minute mark, so I'm going to play the clip here.
Continuing on our news last week of Borderlands 3, and you'll notice that in the title here it says Borderlands DLC. We did not say Borderlands 3 DLC, because this is not, from what we're hearing, Borderlands 3 DLC. And you might be going, wait. What? That doesn't make any sense. Borderlands 2 came out a long time ago. Borderlands 1, I mean, nobody would make any more DLC for that. The prequel stuff that was done in the episodic format, that's long gone too. What do you mean if it's not for 3? What is it for? Well, that's kind of the point, is that the last Borderlands content that we had was this crossover kind of episodic thing where they covered the game and they covered the content in a prequel kind of way. So you might be saying, well, where is this DLC coming from or going to? And that's the thing, is that because there's been this long period of time between Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3, and it is an RPG and it is a story-based game, which is really important to what the game is. They want to bring everybody back up and have them re-immersed in where the lore was at the end of Borderlands 2. So they're supposedly creating some content that's going to be between Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3. And reports is that we will get this content before Borderlands 3 comes out. Now this is the tease. We're going to confirm it. So right now, take this with a grain of salt. But this is, if it's true, this is going to be really, really amazing. And this also means that we will potentially see some of this content drop as early as maybe even this year. So because it's kind of it's a refresher, it's not a full-blown thing. They're not going to, advertise for this like little refresher content, little short. It's boring concepts from the episodic stuff, and how they released a little bit of this content, and then you wait a while and you get a little bit more, and then you wait a while and you get a little bit more. But they're doing this in lead up to the release of Borderlands 3, which is really interesting. So confirming a whole bunch of stuff on this. This is really big news, especially if you're a Borderlands fan.
Obviously, if what they say is true, then this is huge, considering how little information we have had about Borderlands 3 up to this point. The story did not really blow up, though, when they released this video until October, where Supmato and his colleagues found that Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel had been updated in the beta branch of Steam. The updates started early October, where they had been updated before, but nothing consistently as they are now. So these updates started a few times in October, and then 4 times in the same day in October. And these updates are thought to be Gearbox working on build versions of this alleged DLC that was mentioned by the SSS League. We don't know exactly what is in these folders or content due to all the files being protected, but from what I understand and what I've heard, SteamDB suggests that this new mystery content will be purchasable, so it's not just a big update for the game, it will be something more than that. Something else along with these updates are these M. Carlson tests. There have been 9 of these tests in total at the point of recording, and each test is for a different language. And looking at Moby Games, we can find that Michael Carlson is a programmer or technical director at Gearbox Software, so it's most likely him performing these tests on these different languages for some piece of content that is coming out, which is really interesting. So now let's get into the different DLC breakdowns. So first one is Carcosa. It is an unnamed Borderlands pre-sequel alleged DLC, codenamed Carcosa. Carcosa is a fictional city, which has 2 relevant meanings in the Borderlands universe. First is the King in Yellow, and for most Borderlands fans, the first character that comes to mind is Handsome Jack. He was the CEO of Hyperion, which has yellow colors and is prominent in yellow. So most people were able to put together that Gearbox would not do this on accident, especially for the pre-sequel, which definitely focused around Handsome Jack more so than Borderlands 2. The other relevant information is the city of Carcosa is located in the Hyades cluster, and in Greek mythology, Hyades are the daughters of Atlas. Atlas is obviously very relevant in Borderlands, and maybe we could see Atlas being brought back. which is now actually confirmed if you watch the Borderlands 3 leak video. So we know that we're going to Promethea in Borderlands 3, which is where Atlas first found the vault and found the Iridian technology originally. So maybe it would make sense for Gearbox to kind of explain Atlas in some way in this unnamed, unannounced DLC for a way to bring it back and bring it back to the mainstream fans of the series. So the name of the branch is Carcosa for Borderlands the pre-sequel, but the description is actually Ailanthus, which is a tree, so it does mean that this will be a big project for the pre-sequel. For Ailanthus, we know that it has QA builds, which if you don't know stand for quality assurance, and is the process of verifying that a product or game is defect-free, or at least close to being defect-free, which means theoretically it should be close enough along where internally they are testing this. If it's not yet part of their public testing that they've been doing throughout the year, which if you don't know, Gearbox has been asking for individuals to sign up, people that live near their studios to come in, play test some things for them, and if this is in testing or almost in a completed phase, this could be one of those projects. So we know that it's a big project with the codename Ailanthus and Carcosa, so something with the King in Yellow, Handsome Jack, something with Atlas possibly. There are just a ton of options right now with few answers. And the next projects we talk about are for Borderlands 2. There's Mancana, which is also a tree, so this is definitely a larger project for Gearbox. Not so much is known about Mancana, except it recently merged with another file, Anemone. Anemone is a flower, so a smaller project, and is merging with a larger project. And even more recently, Mancana Anemone is localized, so the project is stated as unused DLC, and those even more familiar with SteamDB even found that this will be activated by being purchased, so it's not just an update that's going to be released, something more substantial as I mentioned above. Something else I just want to quickly touch on is localization. If you don't know, when a project is close to being finally released or in the final stages, it will start to be translated in other languages to be released in other markets, which is changes to all the gear, quests, and everything else in-game. So it's usually pretty indicative of a project being almost finished and ready for release, which is really interesting considering we've heard nothing about this. We can see that these two branches merged, either that they are two separate projects being put together for DLC, or if Anemone is the working branch Gearbox uses to test everything once it's good enough, and then they move it to Mancana when it's ready for release. Something though we can also see in the SteamDB files is Anemone Portcullis. Portcullis could be an internal term that Gearbox uses, or it could be Gearbox using it for its literal meaning, which is a strong, heavy, or impassable gate to a fortress. One popular theory is that once all the features were added to this DLC that they wanted, Mancana, Gearbox freezes the code and puts it into this Portcullis branch where no one can get to it. This code is done, it's finished, let's put it here, it's ready just to be QA tested and just normal testing to polish it and finish it and ready for release. So at the time of recording, Anemone Portcullis has been updated a few hours ago, which kind of throws a wrench in this theory if Gearbox is still adding features. So this branch might not just be the freeze features, it might instead just be a master repository, which are updated infrequently when possible release build candidates are ready. There's a lot of conflicting ideas. We aren't too sure about a lot of this, but one thing is that the Anemone Portcullis, it is some kind of final testing, final ground for whatever this is. Whether it's a master code repository or it's more of a final branch, we know that it's really important and that Gearbox updates it really infrequently compared to everything else. Another thing I want to mention is just that the terms of service for Borderlands 2 was updated. I had to update the terms of service on PC, but I have heard it hasn't been pushed out to all players yet, and it might be related to the new content rumors, or it could be nothing. We just really don't know with a lot of these and everything Gearbox is doing behind the scenes. Finally, the last biggest question people always ask or are concerned about is this Borderlands 2 VR related? So at the current state of things, it seems like they are not related. The new content coming to Borderlands 2 or the pre-sequel is most likely not a VR title. We did recently learn that Borderlands 2 VR is not permanent exclusive, it's only a timed exclusive for PlayStation, so we do know it will most likely come to PC eventually. So this could be Gearbox potentially working that over, and then maybe even working on bringing the DLC to Borderlands 2 VR, because if you've been following, Borderlands 2 VR doesn't have any of the DLC or the DLC characters, it's just vanilla base game. But from how it's been received and how people have talked about it, I don't think Gearbox would put any more resources than they have to towards this. Not only that, but Submato has done his own research before bringing any of this information to the community and talked with people familiar with SteamDB, a ton of game devs, just to kind of get ideas on what could be going on. And he wouldn't bring this information unless he thought it was true, and wouldn't bring it out as DLC information unless he thought it was DLC information, which I have talked with him about and we've discussed this before. Obviously, there are those in the community who can still believe that this will be just Borderlands 2 VR for PC. Honestly, you guys can choose whatever side you want to be on this, and there are also some other possibilities we can rule out. Some people thought it would just be new skins or maybe them trying to pull the soundtrack out of the game, but most of these do not require that much testing. There's no reason really to have a nightly build, 2 layers of QA testing, branches merging with each other, and then encrypting all of it if it's just to add a few new skins or something to do with the soundtrack for this game. Just in closing, these updates are still happening almost every day. It seems Gearbox is working towards a stable build of something and moving more files in and keeping the files secure for some project they are going to release. We will know soon enough though whether this turns out to be true. If you believe the most recent Borderlands 3 leaks that have happened in the past week, especially the one that says the game will be revealed sometime in the first or second quarter of 2019, then most likely we will know if these DLC rumors are true before then, hopefully before Borderlands 3 is announced, but at the latest, probably when Borderlands 3 is announced. Gearbox probably wouldn't wait till after. They would want to use that hype for as long as they can. So we will know, which is something I like to cover about rumors, when there is a finite date of when we know if something will be true or not. I love the idea of Gearbox releasing a refresher DLC before the release of Borderlands 3, especially if there is going to be a time jump from Borderlands 2 to Borderlands 3. There's a lot Gearbox could play around with. They could show us Atlas, they could show us some more Handsome Jack, but it could be anything, or it could be nothing. So that's where I'm going to end this video. Once again, huge shout out to Submato and Triple S League for bringing this information to the forefront. Make sure to like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.